In the last few weeks, I have been conducting EHS audits throughout our facility, and it has come to my attention that not everyone may have access to information on personal protective equipment in their area. Now we will conduct a full detailed training later on down the road, but today I just wanted to do a quick review of just using PPE at our facility. So there are OSHA requirements put into place, and these are put into place, and once they are, we now have to follow them. It's a law. So not only do we as a company care that you get home safely to your family and friends, but it's also a requirement that if there are hazards in the workplace, we are following these regulations. Otherwise, if we get audited, it could lead to penalties or fines. So first, I wanted to review 29 CFR 1910.132A, and that just basically states that the application of PPE for eyes, face, head, and extremities, protective clothing, respiratory devices, and protective shields and barriers shall be provided, used, and maintained in a sanitary and reliable condition when and wherever it is necessary. So that's basically saying that legally we are required to provide the proper PPE as an employer, and you as an employee are required to wear it and maintain it and store it properly. In the next regulation, 29 CFR 1910.132D1, it states that the employer shall assess the workplace to determine if hazards are present or are likely to be present. So this is basically saying we fill out our job hazard analyses in each area, everybody fills them out for their job, and then they turn them into us, and we will review all of the hazards that could be identified and make sure that the processes are all reviewed and any hazards that were not identified are identified. And then we will make sure that the proper PPE is provided to that worker. And then the last one is 29 CFR 1910.132F1, and this regulation states that it is the employer that shall provide training to each employee, and it's required by this section to use PPE, and each such employee shall be trained to know at least when the PPE is necessary, what PPE is necessary, how to properly don and doff the equipment, and properly care, maintain, and dispose of the PPE. So I just wanted to share some of these regulations with you so that you know not only do we care about your safety, but that it is also a requirement by law that you guys are wearing your PPE in the workplace. And then, as I mentioned before, we do complete job hazard analyses before completing a job, and this basically just certifies with the company that you have reviewed the job and are aware of any hazards that could be associated with the job you're going to complete. And then when the paperwork is turned into us, we review everything and then make sure that you are provided with the proper PPE. And then another way of knowing what the correct PPE is to know through job training, which you should get when you initially start, and then as processes change, you will get more training and may end up having to change your PPE depending on what the process is. And then by getting your training, you're also becoming more aware of the processes yourself and maybe more aware of the hazards associated. So one other way of knowing what hazards could be associated with the job you're doing is by reviewing a safety data sheet. So you'll get this with any of the materials that you are handling. And then if you look in section 8 of the SDS, it will show you the personal protective equipment that you should wear when you're handling that material. And then moving along, there are many different types of PPE that could be worn for each job. That's why it's important to do the JHAs, the job training, and reviewing your SDSs. So for each area of the plant, I just kind of wanted to review some of the PPE very quickly. If you're administrative or managerial, you may not need, well, you probably won't need any PPE in the office area, but if you go out to the facility floor, you will need a fluorescent vest just to show workers in the areas that you're there because they're not usually used to seeing you, and you will need safety glasses. If you leave the pedestrian pathway, you will also need your steel-toed shoes. It's very important that if you go into any of the designated areas that require more PPE, you're making the supervisors or workers aware that you're going there and you're wearing the proper equipment for that area as well. Plastic forming, it's very important that you have heat-resistant gloves, and there's many different types. These are just some examples. And then a face shield, and then a respirator may also be required. For metal forming, you will need to wear your welding jacket, your welding gloves, your welding helmet, and a respirator. respirator. And then for the chemical plant, it really depends on what you're working with, but in some instances you may need to wear your face shield, a chemical resistant apron, and then there are many different types of gloves that are resistant to different types of chemicals or corrosives depending on what type of gloves you choose to wear. And then shipping and receiving, you'll need to wear steel-toed boots, your safety glasses, a fluorescent vest, and then in some cases you may need to wear gloves as well depending on what you're dealing with. So on to just making sure your PPE is being taken care of. It's very important that once you're done using your PPE, if it's been contaminated with anything, you're cleaning it after use. If it's no longer usable, make sure you're getting with the EHS department so we can figure out how to dispose of it properly. And then if you need new PPE because of a change in process or because yours is damaged, please see your supervisor or us, and we can figure out how to get you new PPE. So just to kind of cover everything, OSHA regulations are put into place, so by law we are required to wear PPE, and the employer is required to provide you with the proper PPE, so make sure you have it. It's very important that you're getting training on the job hazard analyses are being completed, and you're reviewing your SDSs so you know what PPE to be wearing depending on what you're dealing with. And then there are different PPEs that can be worn throughout the facility, so make sure you are aware of the requirements before going into those areas. And then once you're done using your PPE, make sure you're cleaning it or getting with us on the proper disposal, and if anything is damaged, please get with us so we can get you the right stuff or new stuff. That is kind of all I have with the training side of things. Are there any questions? I have a couple questions for everyone. So the first one I have is, how do you know what PPE to wear? Who do you contact when you need new PPE? True or false, it is safe to perform work in an area without appropriate PPE as long as someone else is working in the area and knows you are there? True or false, it is the employer's responsibility to provide PPE to the employees? And name one type of PPE that could be required to be worn in the facility. And then the assignment I have for everyone is to go back to their areas and conduct a job hazard analysis of your regular day-to-day jobs and get with the EHS department if you do not have the proper equipment to complete your job. And if you do not have the proper equipment, stop work until you do. Thank you.